Good morning and welcome to the Tuesday, August 22nd, 9 a.m. Board of County Commissioners meeting. We begin each of our meetings with an invocation. Today's invocation will be given by J.D. McGinley from Springs Church. No, I'm so sorry. If you'd like to come up and introduce yourself, and for everyone else in the room, if you'd like to join us for the invocation, please do so.
Hi, I'm Linda Hunter Bjorklund from New Life Church. Thank you. Join me in prayer. Lord, what a privilege it is to come before you in prayer this morning. You made prayer for each of us to be able to have direct access to the Creator and the Lord of the universe. What a privilege that is. Lord, we thank you this morning for these men and women who've chosen to devote their time and their talents to helping to govern our great city, Lord. And as I'm thinking this morning about Joshua in the Old Testament, who also devoted his time and his talents to governing not a great city, but a great country. And he went to you day after day after day for your wisdom, except one day when he was facing something that he considered pretty irrelevant or pretty minor, and he didn't go to you. And he made a mistake that day with the Gibeonites that cost his country for generations to come. God, you tell us in James 1 that if we lack wisdom, that you will give it to us generously when we ask. So Lord, we're asking, and I'm even thinking of God, you yourself sought wisdom. In Proverbs 8, when you were marking the foundation of the world, wisdom was the architect at your side. So I pray for that same wisdom to be the architect at the side of everyone in this room today. That you would lead and you would guide and you would direct every decision made, every conversation, every choice, every motive, that you would lead and guide them. And Lord, I also pray, Lord, in I think it's Proverbs 3, where you say, if we would acknowledge you, you will direct our paths. So I pray that you would direct the paths of everyone in this room, not only in the business at hand, Lord, in personal issues that everyone is facing here today. And Lord, I would also like to pray for this time of year as we send off our children and our grandchildren to schools. I pray that this year you would keep them safe, uphold them, and teach them and direct them into the ways, the administration, the teachers, all of them, and that you would guide them and teach them, and you would also become the architect at their side, as wisdom was to you, God. We thank you for hearing this prayer today. We thank you for answering this prayer today. We thank you for the reality of being able to come to you in this very real way in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. And if Commissioner Gonzalez, you'd lead us in the pledge. Okay, so we have completed items 1 and 2, the invocation and pledge of allegiance, and we are on to item 3.
Item number 3 is staff emergency items, and I'm unaware of any staff emergency items today.
Item 4.
Item number 4 is changes, postponements, and notice of the next meeting. I'm unaware of any changes or postponements to today's agenda, and the next meeting will be Tuesday, August 29th at 9:00 a.m.
And before we move on to item 5, we do have 2 commissioners who are not present today. So if I could get a motion to excuse Commissioner Bremer and Commissioner Williams, please.
Move to excuse Commissioners Bremer and Williams.
I'll second.
Okay, I will call the roll. Commissioner Vanderwerf,
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Aye.
and the Vice Chair votes aye. That passes 3-0. And we are on to item 5.
Item number 5 is the consent calendar consisting of item numbers 5A through 5G7.
Is there anyone here wishing to comment on an item on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it up here for comments and/or a motion.
Madam Vice Chair, just a couple of, one quick comment, and then if you'll permit me, I'll make a motion. So on item 5F, and this is with regard to the federal assistance to restore damages sustained in El Paso County. I just wanted to just let everybody know that I also sit on the Fountain Creek Watershed District, and they did also sustain some pretty substantial damage south of the county border, and that didn't actually fit well with the particular request for federal assistance regarding El Paso County. But Pueblo had chosen not to proceed with a request for federal assistance. So they are in the process of trying to figure out how to fund some of the damages that took place south of El Paso County on Fountain Creek. So I just wanted to bring that up, that there was more damage that was caused by the rain up here that went down the creek, and they're looking for ways to proceed with that. I don't believe that they had included their request into our request, so I think they're going to have to deal with it separately. With that in mind, if I may proceed, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar items 5A through 5G7.
Second.
Okay, any additional comments? Right, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Vanderwerf,
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Aye.
and the Vice Chair votes aye. That passes 3-0. And we are on item 6.
Item number 6 is comments by elected officials and commissioner liaison reports.
Okay, do we have any the countywide? I don't see anyone here in the audience. Do we have anyone online countywide that wish to speak? Okay, then we will proceed with Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. A couple of updates. Last week, Wednesday, I did participate in Denver on the state's Board of Health. There were no votes for any particular rulemaking, but there was one request for rulemaking that would take place in the future, and I will share that with the El Paso County Public Health Board. Then on Thursday, I participated in a Special Forces fundraiser golf scramble up in the Denver area, enormous amount of fun, and it was for a great cause. And then on Friday the 18th, that's when I participated in the Fountain Creek Watershed District meeting, where they discussed some of the challenges they had from the flooding that took place here. And that evening, I participated in the Rocky Mountain National Defense Industrial Association Black Tie Dinner. It was great to see many of my friends from the defense industry once again. It seemed like because of COVID, I went a couple of years really without interacting with a lot of those folks, so it was really fun to go see them again. And then, let's see, for later today, of course, we have our informal, and then it's my plan to go to the Air Force Academy's farm-to-table dinner. And I think some of my fellow colleagues may be going to that as well. And then Wednesday afternoon at 3 o'clock, I'll be participating in the Airport Advisory Commission meeting. And then I'm really looking forward to Friday, the legislative barbecue down at the State Fair. And I think many of my colleagues will be going to that as well. And that's all I have for today.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Vice. Several things. Here in a couple hours, I'll get to attend a major announcement of, I believe, some economic expansion in our great community here. So that'll be at the Chamber's office at, I believe it's at 3 o'clock. So I'm looking forward to seeing that announcement and or hearing the announcement and speaking at that. I will also be attending the Air Force Academy Superintendent's Farm to Table event tonight. It'll be a great opportunity to see other local leaders from our community there. We'll have our Board of Health meeting Wednesday morning. Have the Fountain Valley Senior Center monthly meeting Wednesday afternoon. And then very much looking forward to the Hispanic Chambers La Vida annual event and fundraiser. It's a great event. If this is the third year they've been doing it, I've gone each of the last 2 years. Highly recommend it if you haven't gotten a ticket. It's a great fundraiser for one of our local chambers. And I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. And so this week is a little bit slower in terms of scheduled meetings for me, which I'm looking forward to catching up on many of the communications with constituents this week. But I am really excited about participating in, on Thursday, I will be speaking to the third graders at Bennett Ranch Elementary. We will be talking about local government as part of the requirements for kids to learn about local government in school. And so I'm very much looking forward to that. I've done it before, and it is always a joy to see how excited they are to ask questions, tell on their parents, all kinds of fun things that I get the opportunity to do when I get to go talk to those kids. So really looking forward to that. I also have a regional building meeting on Thursday as well. And that is all for this week. So we will go ahead and move to item 7.
Item number 7 is community service organization reports, and there are none.
Item 8.
Item number 8 is public comment on items not scheduled on the agenda. This is the public's opportunity to speak on an item that is not scheduled on today's agenda. And Madam Vice Chair, I didn't have anyone sign in ahead of time.
Okay, at this time, do we have anyone here who would like to speak on an item that is not on the agenda? Is there anyone online? Okay. We will move to item 9.
Item number 9 is the called up consent calendar, and there are no items called up.
Item 10.
Item number 10 is the land use regular item, Special District Service Plan, Eagleview Metropolitan District, a request by PT Eagleview LLC for approval of a Colorado Revised Statute Title 32 Special District Service Plan for the Eagleview Metropolitan District. The 121-acre area included within the request is zoned RR 2.5, residential rural, and is located directly west of the Paintbrush Hills subdivision, north of Stapleton Drive, south of Arroyo Lane, and east of Raguar Road. The proposed service plan includes the following: a maximum debt authorization of $8 million, a debt service mill levy of 50 mils for residential, and an operations and maintenance mill levy of 15 mils for a total maximum combined residential mill levy of 65 mils. The Planning Commission recommended approval 5-1. A request from Ms. Fuller to the BOCC to consider financing options from a public policy standpoint was discussed. No public opposition to the request. Parcel number 52260000001 and 002. Commissioner District number 2. File ID 23003. Carrie Parsons, Senior Planner, Planning and Community Development.
Good morning, Commissioners. Carrie Parsons with Planning and Community Development. We do have a gentleman from the Paintbrush Hills Metropolitan District that would like to speak regarding this item. It's unclear if it's opposing or pro. However, he would like to speak. Chairman, Vice Chair. Okay, this is an application for the Eagleview Metropolitan District. The review staff on this was myself with assistance from Ms. Sego and Ms. Smith with County Finance. If there's anybody watching that would like to participate in the hearing, if you would please email the email on your screen and we'll get you into the queue. I'd like to discuss the mandatory criteria for disapproval. So this is unlike other applications before you where you are to find that the applications meets the listed criteria. In this case, you must disapprove the requested service plan unless evidence satisfactory to each of the following is presented to this board. So that being said, sufficient existing projected need for the organized service in the area proposed by the district, existing service in the area to be served by the proposed special district is inadequate for the present and projected needs. The proposed special district is capable of providing that economic and sufficient service to the area within its boundaries, and the area to be included in the proposed special district has or will have the ability to discharge that debt. There is also discretionary criteria for disapproval that the board may or may not disapprove the service plan, and that is listed on the screen. More specifically, this is a request by PT Eagleview and the Eisenhower River Pogue law firm for approval of that Colorado Revised Statute Title 32 Special District. The proposed service plan does include a maximum debt authorization of $8 million, a debt service mill levy of 50 mills for residential, an O&M or operation and maintenance mill levy of up to 15 mills. The applicant is also requesting the ability to have a special purpose mill levy of up to 5 mills for covenant enforcement. However, that would mean that they would have to lower the maximum mill levy on the debt service for the residential or the O&M so that they could not exceed the maximum total of 65 mill levies. The requested purpose of the district is listed on the screen. Those are the standard statutory purpose of a district. The applicant is proposing to include all of these within the district, although they will not be providing all of these services within the district's plan. The hearing dates, this item was heard by the Planning Commission on July 20th. As Ms. Allard mentioned, this was approved 5-1 with Ms. Fuller voting no. As indicated in her summary, she did request that staff convey the message that the board look at policy standpoints for financing. She indicated that she felt that developers have advantages to districts by gaining tax-free financing opportunities where smaller individuals do not have those opportunities. The Board of County Commissioners date set hearing was done on August 1st, and then today, of course, is the actual hearing date. The property on the screen, as you can see, is located west of the existing Paintbrush Hills master planned community. The Paintbrush Hills Master Plan Community is an urban density community comprising of 6,000 acre minimum lots and then 20,000 acre lots as buffers to the rural communities to the west. This property lies within the rural residential 2.5 acres here indicated on the screen, and it is bounded by rural residential 5-acre properties to the north, west, and south. This property is proposed to be served by well and septic. The approved preliminary plan for the site includes 38 lots. The applicant is currently working with our department to resolve some construction drawings and drainage improvements associated with the final plat. Those drainage improvements are anticipated to be paid for the design construction by this district if this district were to be approved. The existing mill levies on the property are about 72.6 currently. If the district were to be approved at 65, that would add an additional 65, so about 137.6 mill levies would be the new mill levy for the 38 lots within the district's boundary. In terms of the Finance Department analysis by Ms. Smith, El Paso County's SOT or special ownership tax impacted by an average of $4,377 in a year. In the first year, which is anticipated to be 2026, the collections would be reduced by approximately $214 and grow to about $7,600 at the final maturity. During that same period, the El Paso County's property taxes are expected to grow approximately $2,250 in the first year and up to $80,758 in year 2064. Overall, the 40-year course of the project, we estimate, Ms. Smith estimates, the total El Paso County special ownership tax collections would be reduced by about $175,000, while property taxes would increase by about $1.6 million.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Vice. So it says 40-year course. On the original one, it says a 30-year bond. Was there a conflict, or could you explain that difference?
Yes, I will briefly touch on it, and then the applicant's financial representative is here to provide a more detailed analysis. But essentially, they will have bonds for 10 years, and then they will refinance those bonds to a 30-year program, which then meets our special district criteria. In terms of the master plan analysis required, the place type is suburban residential, so the zoning is in accordance with the master plan, as well as the service plan would be anticipated, if approved, to enable the district to do those design and construction of the public and private infrastructure, such as roadways and drainage improvements. And then the district would then own and maintain any private improvements, where the county would then own and maintain any public improvements, such as public roadways. Therefore, staff did make the suggestion that the district is compliant with the El Paso County Master Plan place type. In terms of area of change, this is slighted for new development. Again, the special district would enable that, so staff made the conclusion that that would also be consistent with that master plan type, place type, or area of change. In terms of the water master plan has, I just want to point out, encourages more systematic monitoring and reporting of water quality in individual wells. The site is proposed to be served by wells. The districts, the representatives from the district, and as indicated in the service plan, have indicated that the district will take on the responsibility of that groundwater monitoring and reporting in lieu of an HOA if the district is improved. The request for water finding sufficiency was already completed at the preliminary plan back in February of this year. And rural level development proposed to be served by individual wells may be consistent with our goals of the water master plan. Any questions on the water master plan analysis? In terms of staff summary of application, based on what the applicant has provided in the service plan and the letter of intent, the applicant has stated that there are no other governmental entities located in the immediate vicinity of the district that consider it desirable, feasible, or practical to undertake the planning, design, acquisition, construction, installation, relocation, redevelopment, and financing of the public improvements needed for this district. I believe there is a gentleman that will speak to that component as well here in the audience today. There are no other governmental or quasi-governmental entities, including the county, located immediately to the vicinity of the districts that can provide those services. The applicant has stated that it's not practical or feasible for the adjacent Paintbrush Hills Metropolitan District to be burdened with additional debt incurred by the design, construction, and maintenance of the necessary infrastructure to serve the district. The district's financial plan concludes ability to construct those public improvements, and the district's financial plan concludes that the district has the ability to pay off that indebtedness. Again, the district's representative is here to discuss that in great detail. Moreover, I've already discussed the 10-year refinance plan and then going out to a 30-year bond. The plan does rely upon a 4-year development build-out schedule beginning in 2023 and ending in 2026. There are 38 residential homes proposed. The financial plan concludes that the average value will be about $1.2 million. It assumes that full build-out will capitalize on the increased demand for single-family in the Falcon area. I should point out that the values of the rural homes to the west and south west and south, also on well and septic, are about $615,000 to $775,000 based on the assessor's data. The values to the east, which are in the Paintbrush Hills Metropolitan District, also on central services, so urban services, are roughly about $700,000 to $725,000. The applicant has provided the standard disclosure form within the service plan, and standard notices will be required on final plats and any closing documents. And with permission, Vice Chair, I'd like to ask the applicant, if there are no questions for staff, to come up and make their presentation.
Are there any questions from staff from the board? Okay.
Good morning, commissioners. First and foremost, I wanted to thank staff for all of their work on this project. We have spent a bunch of time going over this and the service plan to make sure that we were in compliance with the county standards. And so I just wanted to thank Carrie and her team for all of their work on this. I am here today representing the applicants for the Eagle View Metropolitan District. We also have representatives from DA Davidson, the financial advisor, so your hard math questions, I will defer to them, although I will touch on Commissioner Gonzalez's question during the presentation, so you have some clarity on that item. We also have representatives of the applicant, PT Eagle View, in case there's any development-related questions. As Ms. Parsons indicated, the timeline here, the land use is still in process. From a special district standpoint, on the right hand of the screen, we're here today with the public hearing before the Board of County Commissioners. Assuming that the Board of County Commissioners approves this plan, we would then move forward to a formation election in November of 2023. Hopeful that the district court would then enter an order by the end of 2023, allowing this project to move forward. Important to note here is the timing. We've been blessed and cursed with back-to-back years of special district elections in May, which has afforded more opportunities in the past years for flexibility in the timing of forming districts. That's not the case in 2024, as that schedule has regulated to an odd year schedule. So the next opportunity after this November to form a metro district is in November of 2024. The timing is key with this project and the land use timeline because the applicant is still moving forward with land use at this point, and is hoping to have that by the end of this year. If they're not able to form the Metropolitan District in this cycle this year, they will actually lose a year of development in not having the Metro District formed because they can't utilize the Metro District for funding of public improvements until it's formed. So we are here ahead of where I usually like to bring projects to the Board of County Commissioners. We usually like to do that at the same time they're getting final approvals on land use. Those are still in the works. So there are some items, as Ms. Parsons was indicating, that are still outstanding and being worked on the land use side. It doesn't prohibit the project from moving forward, but I just like to explain that because I usually like to bring sort of a package deal of everything is done with a nice bow on it. And so not quite as neat here. Location, I think Ms. Parsons had a better map, so I will move past my map here, but this shows you generally the location of the site. 38 lots, as Ms. Parsons indicated. This is a larger lot, more rural development, septic, and well service, juxtaposed to sort of the more dense populated metropolitan district of Paintbrush Hills, which has more dense population and development. Metropolitan districts generally, I think you guys have all heard my spiel on metro districts. They're created to serve a public use. So they fill in where the county and municipalities aren't able to provide services for development. They're consistent with the user pay method, so growth paying its own way. Again, consistent with municipalities and counties not having the resources to provide for the services to these newer developed areas. Special districts have the ability to fund certain public improvements through bond issuance. This is beneficial to the future property owners because they pay for the public improvements through a property tax rather than an inflated initial home price. I know it's a bit of a joke in Colorado to say more affordable housing, but special districts do allow for home prices to stay lower than they would otherwise. Special districts have access to longer-term funding and lower interest rates, so they have ability to tap those municipal bond markets. At the Planning Commission, that was one of the comments that came out of Planning Commission was for the Board of County Commissioners to just discuss on a sort of policy level, not specific to this plan, but how that municipal type financing might be provided to developers in the future without special districts. I think the legislature and a lot of people would like ideas on that if the county commissioners have any ideas, but that was what came out of Planning Commission. That was sort of the sentiment was, is there a way that this can happen without special districts? Right now, practically no, so more of a long-range planning question for the Board of County Commissioners there. Districts are commonplace. I think my numbers here are a little bit outdated, but last we looked, there was over 2,500 metropolitan districts in the state of Colorado and over 150 in El Paso County. Specific to this district will be funding initially the on and off-site roadway improvements. As I understand it, I think all of those are being dedicated to the county unless there's some changes in the development plan. There's also on and off-site drainage facilities and landscaping. I know there's a lot of drainage issues that are quite costly in this area that the applicants have been working through with the county to decide funding and whose responsibility ultimately those are. That's really one of the driving factors of the cost of this project from a public infrastructure standpoint. Maintenance and enforcement responsibilities, as Ms. Parsons mentioned, the proposal here is to streamline and have the district performing the covenant enforcement related to the water rights and any other covenant enforcement as well. Legislatively, the power for districts to have covenant enforcement was added some number of years ago to allow streamlining and less layers of government or less layers of entities, if you will, avoiding having both an HOA and a metropolitan district when there's minimal HOA type functions to be done as there are here. So the district would be taking on that water rights accounting. There's also 2 stormwater detention and water quality ponds and the associated drainage ways and access roads that the district would be taking on. As I already mentioned, special purposes, covenant enforcement and design review services, along with that water rights accounting. There would not be an HOA here to streamline the entities that the residents have to go to, and no overlapping services with other providers. So applicants have coordinated, water and sanitary sewer are both provided on a local rural basis. They've been coordinating on fire protection and other services to make sure there's no overlap of services in the area.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you. Quick question for you. I see on the limited purpose district, there's the statement of no overlapping services for fire protection, but I think I saw on a previous chart that there is a mill levy assessment already in place for fire protection, or a fire district at least. So I'm just kind of asking what's going on here. Why are we saying no service with fire protection, but there's already a previous mill levy?
Great question. What I intended to say, and maybe I wasn't clear, is there's not going to be any overlap. So they're not providing fire service. There is existing fire service to the area. So the applicant is coordinating with the fire service provider in the area, whose name is escaping me, but and will only be putting in any infrastructure that's needed. I believe there's currently 2 hydrants in the area that are already in place. So I don't know that there's going to be any fire infrastructure needed. But in the event that the existing provider does require an additional hydrant or any other service, any other infrastructure to provide fire service to the area, this district could construct that and then dedicate it to the fire protection district.
Okay, thank you.
Criteria for special district service plans. The Special District Act requires the listed items, proposed services, boundary maps, population and AV estimates, facilities be constructed, cost estimates, and proposed IGAs. All that information is included in the existing service plan. Additionally, we have the El Paso County Model Service Plan and Chapter 9 of the Land Development Code and your recently adopted Resolution 22376, also in compliance with those items. At this point, staff has no outstanding issues or concerns with the model service plan. As I mentioned, I appreciated all the work we did with staff to work through the model service plan and make sure we were in conformance with the newly adopted land development code and model service plan. And that service plan is consistent with the county's policies and requirements. For this district, we have a maximum debt authorization. We're asking for $8 million. The estimated public improvement costs here are just under $6.5 million. You see a little delta there between the estimated costs and the maximum authorization. This is to allow for inflation, contingencies, and unanticipated changes. As we all know, the construction market has been quite volatile these days, and inflation has been a little bit higher than normal. So we do have a bit of a cushion there to allow for any of those contingencies. Of course, the amount of debt authorized will be constrained by the market ultimately. Projected currently is actually a much lower available debt issuance amount, but that'll be decided by the bond market, which is driven by the assessed valuation, interest rates, and lots of complicated things that smarter people here can talk about if the commissioners have any questions on that item. As Ms. Parsons mentioned, we have maximum mill levies in place. We do specifically call out the special purpose mill levy of up to 5 mills. That is not to increase the cap beyond the 65 mills, subject to adjustment. That's just because we like to be transparent. We like to make sure that if there's a covenant enforcement component, we can specially call that out. And so we've included that in the model service plan. Speaking of transparency requirements, we do have the county mandated transparency requirements of the disclosure notice. There's also a number of disclosure notices and transparency items required by state law that, of course, the district will be complying with on a going forward basis. This last bullet here, development remains subject to land use approvals. Just point that out, and I usually don't like to have a big, huge block of text on a screen, on a slide. This comes from your service plan model. It does not imply approval of the development. And I point that out because we are here today ahead of final plat approval. So approval of this service plan does not imply that the final plat has or will be approved in the future in its current form or any other form. This is approval of the service plan. Obviously, the service plan and the land development do go kind of hand in hand. So in the event that the final plat was not going to be approved, this district would have to reassess its viability, but there is procedures for that under the law. As Ms. Parsons showed, the overlapping mill levies, we also have the same slide. It is the Falcon Fire Protection District. Now I'm reminded of the name. They'll be providing the fire protection services to the area. And of course, this is showing the maximum possible debt imposition from the added Eagle View Metropolitan District. This is a question that came up at Planning Commission, is what would the tax liability be for a home with a market value of $1.2 million, which is within the range of this development. The annual tax impact would be an added approximately $5,500 on top of the existing $6,200. There are mandatory statutory criteria for approving the special district. That is what we're here to discuss today. So I have those up on the screen. We'll go through them here on a one-by-one basis. There's sufficient and existing projected need for organized service in the area to be serviced by the proposed special district. I think, as everybody knows, demand for housing in the area is quite high. The county has already approved the Eagle View subdivision preliminary plan. This is 38 single-family residential lots. It was approved earlier this year. This is in line with the need for housing in the area. This is some higher-end housing, but the projected need for that is quite high. So this is needed. Construction of the public improvements is needed because there's no other service providers in the area that are going to construct those. The county's not able to. There's no municipalities in the area. The Paintbrush Hills Metropolitan District, while adjacent, is serving its own development, and this area is not within their service area. And there needs to be ongoing maintenance of some of those public improvements that are not being accepted. So this district would be able to serve that feature for those 38 units within its boundaries and provide the covenant enforcement and architectural design review for that area. Second criteria, which I kind of touched on during the first, they all seem to overlap a little bit, is that the existing service in the area to be served by the proposed special district is inadequate for present and projected needs. As I mentioned, no governmental or district entities located in the vicinity consider it desirable, feasible, or practical to undertake the planning, design, acquisition, construction, or financing of the public improvements. My office did have some conversations with the Paintbrush Hills Metro District. We understand that we're outside of their service area. And as I understand it, that area is already mostly developed, is a more densely populated area, has existing outstanding indebtedness and existing residential concerns for that community. And so it was judged that it was not feasible or desirable for them to provide the service either. The proposed district will provide the funding for the required improvements and will be the perpetual maintenance provider for the enforcement responsibilities and the ongoing maintenance of those water and detention pond features as well. The proposed district is capable of providing economical and sufficient service to the area within its proposed boundaries. A 65 mil cap is well in line with comparable districts in the area, which range by our estimates from our research between 30 and 70 mils. The estimated reduction of end home price is approximately $55,000. As I mentioned, a little bit of a joke in Colorado to call something more affordable housing, but it does keep the price of housing slightly lower. And the district will provide adequate and perpetual maintenance through its operations and maintenance mill levy and potentially the special purpose mill levy for covenant enforcement.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Vice. So on the previous slide, the first bullet, so it says the costs are in line with comparable districts. I believe, and my staff, when they come back, can confirm this or not, I think in my 6.5 years, we've only turned down one Metro District request, maybe two. And I believe I recall it was because of a request for a 40-year bonding. And we said that was not normal, and we turned it down. So when you say you're comparable to the other districts are doing 30-year, but I see where you're doing some sort of, we actually talked about this a couple of weeks ago when
And I
Mr.
promised to answer that question during my presentation, and I didn't.
But we're seeing 40. So you're saying comparable, but comparable is 30 years. So how is this comparable if you're asking for essentially a 40-year request?
Yeah, so we are actually not asking for anything outside of the standard service plan. There's no deviation there. Your model service plan requires a 30-year imposition term for the mill levy. No, I'm sorry, a 30-year maturity date for bonds. That is standard. That is what is in the service plan. That is what's shown in our models. Maturity date does not necessarily mean that you can't impose the mill levy beyond that period, and there's ability for refunding. So I'm not going to get too into the weeds on the financial model, but I think what the financial model is showing is a refunding and an imposition of the mill levy past 30 years that is standard, that is allowed by your model service plan, that is allowed by your land development code. So no special requests are related to the mill levy. Speaking of the financial plan, which I don't want to talk about very much, but we do have the financial plan, which is Exhibit D to the service plan, and we do have someone from D.A. Davidson here to answer those questions if you want to get into the specifics of the financial plan. But that financial plan does show that the 38 lots and their projected assessed valuation over the term of the bonds they do have the financial ability to pay off those bonds. It also shows the operations and maintenance mill levy that would be assessed as well for those ongoing O&M responsibilities the district has and how that will fund those. So showing that the proposed district has or will have, in this case, will have the financial ability to discharge the proposed indebtedness on a reasonable basis. As I was mentioning very early in the presentation, the financing plan is further subject to limitations of the bond industry and limitations imposed by bond counsel. So there's tax-exempt bonds must demonstrate feasibility at issuance. So beyond even showing feasibility at this time, at the time of service plan, in order to have tax-exempt bonds issued, those bonds have to demonstrate feasibility at the time that they're issued as well. So if there's any drastic changes in the market, those would be captured by that feasibility demonstration at that time. And there's further limitations in state statutes. Next steps and timeframe. As Ms. Parsons mentioned, the Planning Commission did recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners at their hearing on July 20th. And the request today is for the Board of County Commissioners to approve the service plan without modifications. In the event that that's how this moves forward, we would then submit this to an election on November 7th, 2023. With proposed organization by the end of the year in order to let this project move forward in 2024 or late 2023. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions or phone a friend if we have financial questions.
Madam Vice, thank you, Madam Vice. So the financial plan, is it in line with other metro districts? Is there anything interesting, different than other, outside of the 30-year? Again, I'm concerned about seeing the 10-year and 30-year in the upfront plan. That's different than I've seen before. Outside of the one time I saw a 40-year request and we turned that down. So I don't understand why you are already planning for 40 years. To me, it questions whether this is viable when you're doing something that no other metro district is asking us, except one that got turned down. Why are we asking for something different today?
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm not familiar with the one that was turned down or what the request is. The request here is not anything outside of the standard service plan or what the model, the county's land use code allows for. It is a 30-year maturity on the bonds, and I'm happy to call down DA Davidson, have them just walk through what they've presented to the county. They work on many more of these service plans in front of the county and other jurisdictions than I do, and I think they would be able to maybe better answer sort of what has been presented to the county in the past and what is standard in the industry.
Thanks, Jennifer. Good morning, commissioners. Just to introduce myself, Tim Morzell with D.A. Davidson. We provide underwriting services to the district, obviously put together the financial plan here. Just to start, there's really nothing very unique about the financial plan that we put together for this district. It's consistent with the vast majority of financing plans for other districts that we've worked on in the county, and also consistent with the model service plan.
So again, how many have you presented to the county that have done 40-year plans?
So we are not assuming a 40-year bond. The service plan allows for a 40-year imposition period. Our financing plan assumes that early stage bonds are issued. They have a 30-year maturity. And then between year 5 or 10, we're assuming year 10, homeowners would have the ability to refinance those bonds at much lower interest rates. At that point, homeowners would have the ability to say, we want an additional 30 years, which would push it to a 40-year imposition period. Or if they want to pay off the debt over the original timeline, they could issue 20-year bonds at that point. But typically, it's advantageous to issue a new 30 and bring down the annual debt service payment as low as possible.
So when, as you're talking about this, at that 5 to 10 year mark, at that point, it is expected that the development would be fully built out with the 28 homes.
Correct.
And so there would that be an election at that point for those bonds, or what is the mechanism that would trigger that when you say the residents would have the option? Is that through the Metro District Board itself, or is that a direct election?
It would be through the board. So typically early stage bonds are sold with a 3 to 5 year call, which means that at year 3 or year 5, you have the ability to refinance those bonds. At that point, it would be the district board who would make that decision, which in many cases would be homeowner controlled at that point.
Okay, so that many cases is where I want to dig in a little bit on this. So as we know, when an election comes up on this board and for the formation, how many individuals would be able to participate in that election? Do you estimate at this point? How many owners?
I might let Jennifer answer that question.
Yeah, consistent with most metro districts when they're first formed, the sole owner, I believe, is the applicant at this point. So at the formation election, that would be applicant representatives that are qualified on a parcel within the district. So usually have, depending on spouses, a number between 5 and 10 eligible electors in the district. And then as the homeowners come in, that's the life cycle of the district. Those homeowners then run for the board and take over the board of directors. And that's what is being referred to as, the 3 to 5 year call period. Once the district is developed, homeowners take over the board and are able to then sort of control their own destiny, if you will, by refinancing the debt on terms that are favorable. I've seen some communities where the districts or residents have taken over the district board where they prefer to pay off the debt as fast as possible because that's how they run their own personal finances. I've seen some where they would prefer to draw it out and have smaller property tax payments. So that allows the resident board members to refinance in that 3 to 5 year period and make those determinations on their own.
So again, I'm going to dig in a little bit more of this because the practical application of what this has looked like in some special districts, there are situations where residents actually don't get to really take over that board before these important decisions are made. So that's what I'm really trying to get at, is making sure that truly residents will have the ability to make those decisions. So you're going to have your initial board, which again, understanding it's the current owners. I want to make that clear too for the public, because this is a very confusing process. I happen to live in a metro district and happen to know that even as an elected official who eats, sleeps, and breathes policy, it is still very difficult to understand. So we will have that initial board. There will be future elections. But even at that, say, 5-year mark, it is possible, it is very possible, I think, based on terms, that there will not have been an opportunity for the residents to take the majority of those seats. Would you agree with that?
So if it's an organizational election in November of 2023, our first election, the next election would be 2025, when I don't know how, if it's 3 or 2 of the seats are up at that election. So it'd be 2025 and then 2027. Someone's yelling 2, phone a friend. So 2. So that would be, it's possible, yes. I mean, it's possible that residents will never want to run for this board, to be honest with you, Vice Chair. I mean, I have special districts in other communities where we have developers that are begging homeowners to join the board because they're no longer developing the property and the homeowners are not interested. So I can't guarantee to you that homeowners in this community will or will not be interested. I can tell you that they will have opportunity by law to join the board in 2025 and 2027. As projected, that would be squarely within the 3 to 5 year call period, is when, in theory, interested homeowners could have already taken over the board.
Okay, I appreciate that, and you're absolutely talking about some of the downfalls in my mind to metro districts, though, just as you've said, they're important for financing these things, and we haven't figured out a better mechanism at this point. There are some situations that, for exactly the reasons you said, and even when folks don't want to step forward, they're unpaid positions, they can be very difficult to fill. And so really what I'm just trying to really get at here is the reality, especially in such a small metro district where you only have, you're limited on your pool there, you're not, this is not a, 3,000-5,000 kind of population. Just want to make sure that, there's truly an opportunity for residents to weigh in, not just on paper, but in actual reality here for what this is going to be like, because they're going to be living with it. Absolutely. But you make very good points, and I appreciate the discussion on this.
Just one, if I may, just one other point. I mean, in a small community here where you only have 38 residents, what I've seen in the smaller communities is that it's actually more likely that homeowners do become engaged and interested and run for the board. In the larger communities, I've seen more of the mindset of, well, somebody else will take care of it. So hopefully, I think it's especially this development group's mindset that they want to build nice communities and give these amenities and districts over to the residents. So I hope for their sake that they're not stuck on the board in perpetuity. But in these smaller communities, that is at least my experience in other areas, that the smaller communities seem to have more engagement and more interest.
Thank you. Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So this is actually a question that I wouldn't have probably thought about asking a couple of years ago, but I'm just going to ask the question today. And that's with regard to homeowner properties going up in value. They most definitely have done that because of the high demand in our area here. And in some cases, with a particular mill levy that for some housing areas, that's made it difficult for the landowners with that mill levy because their property taxes have doubled or tripled or something like this. So what's the practical application of something like that? How is that addressed in a special district like this? Is it a fairly common practice for whoever is on that board for the special district, whether it be maybe the original landowner as a single entity or maybe the homeowners as themselves, if they're trying to service that debt, but their home prices have doubled in the last 10 years, say something like that, would they Have you seen an application where they do vote to reduce the mill levy to just service the debt as opposed to, say, trying to pay off the debt early because it's harder for them to afford that rate? So what's been the practical application in this area? Because it's seeming to be a big issue across the state of Colorado and certainly a huge issue in El Paso.
Yeah, and Commissioner Vanderwerf, great question, and that does afford more flexibility, frankly, because the obligation under your bond covenants and your indenture is to make the payments on the debt. Now, in past years, we've had this mill levy cap, right? And that's through the bond documents so that you don't have to impose more than 50 mills in order to service the debt, because you don't want homeowners, if things go the opposite direction, to have 100 mills to try to service debt, right? The bondholder takes that risk. Here, with the increasing property values, it's a very realistic possibility that you could see decreased mill levies in order to make the same debt payment obligations, or keep the mill levy at the higher level and pay off the debt and much more quickly. And I'll let you've probably seen much more real-life
Sure.
practical
Yeah,
application.
absolutely. I mean, we are seeing a lot of that, especially this year with where we saw assessed values come in across the Front Range. It has been very common for homeowner-controlled boards to want to refinance and lower their mill levy from maybe something close to 50 to something closer to 30. And because they've seen such significant appreciation, they are able to do that based on the current values of their homes.
So there's nothing in this proposal that would prevent the future landowners from reducing the mill levy.
No.
They'll have a limit to how high they can go. This will be the upper limit, but there's nothing that prevents them from lowering it so that they can match the revenues to the debt servicing.
That's correct. I mean, as long as they're able to make annual debt service payments, and that will be dependent on market conditions at time of refunding, which are likely going to be better than they are today. And it will be a much improved credit as well, which will allow them to secure a lower interest rate and lower coverage requirements. But I think, there's a very high likelihood that they will be able to lower their mill levy if that's their desire when they go to refund these bonds.
Okay, thank you.
What is the bond interest rate projected on this?
We are assuming a 5% interest rate on the initial series of bonds, which we are assuming drops down to 4% at time of refunding, which is a little bit below the current market. But, the goal in underwriting these deals and coming up with assumptions for service plans is to tie to maybe a more strong market so that we're not limiting the district's ability to raise funds when they do actually go to the market.
So switching gears a little bit away from finances, I do have some questions around the intended uses for the covenant restrictions. And you mentioned this and about taking away multiple layers, which is certainly one perspective. But I am a little curious, again, as we talk about these things about it's very difficult to find people to run for boards. A metro district is an additional way of government in the county, which again, I think we would all agree is necessary for these type of improvements, but still not a perfect design, as there rarely is in government. But what is the level and extent that the district is expecting to enforce? What level of detail are we getting down? And I'm asking these questions because we also have a lot of concerns. I hear a lot of them all the time from residents who live in an existing metro district. They feel their metro district is in some way overburdening them as property owners. And, in those situations, there is some recourse, but it's many election cycles to change boards. In some cases that happens and they are confused that we don't have oversight, we just approve. So I'm just trying to understand at this beginning process where we can have that discussion, what type of covenant enforcement are we contemplating? Are we getting down to the nitty gritty of trash cans and more of an HOA function? Or is this more related to design and more long-term improvements?
Vice Chair Gittner, so at this point, there are no covenants recorded against the property that I'm aware of. So I can't, I'm sort of going to answer your question in theory of what I've heard from the developer applicant on what the plan is going forward. So the district would be enforcing the covenants. My understanding is those covenants would include design review, also like no parking of large RVs in the area, that the type of standard items that in this type of community the neighbors want. I don't know if it gets down to the nitty gritty of trash cans and those type of things. I have to admit, I don't know what the trash service to the area is, but it would include those type of enforcement items that neighbors in this type of smaller community of 38 would want to see. So no overnight parking of RVs, no extended parking of RVs in the area. Design review, making sure that the aesthetics of the neighborhood are consistent. And if either one of the applicants have any thoughts on, what their plans are for those covenants, those are not recorded against the property at this point. But as you noted, the thought process here is the alternative if this district didn't have covenant enforcement and design review powers is that an HOA would be formed. You'd still have the same covenants, and now you'd have two entities, and you'd have a tax bill, and there'd be an HOA assessment, and you'd have to find more community volunteers to serve on two boards. And what I've seen is then you get more confusion because somebody shows up at the HOA meeting and is asking district questions, and someone shows up at the district and is asking HOA questions. And so the thought being, especially here in the smaller community, is to streamline those processes for everyone and make it more convenient.
And I appreciate that. I've said in some of these hearings before, actually over the summer, I hear you on all those things. Those are all the positive benefits of streamlining this. On the other side is there's a very different situation in my mind between what an HOA is, which is a private contract, and the government enforcement. That is a little bit concerning to me of starting to mix those things together. So that's why I asked those questions. So I appreciate that. Again, I still have concerns about mixing those kind of things because the government has all kinds of different enforcement mechanisms that a private agency doesn't have. And so if we're getting down to the nitty gritty, I do start to worry, it has been known to happen that sometimes boards have very overzealous members on them, or people who, especially in a small community, start to utilize those things in a poor manner. And so, again, we're relying on voters in this situation, but it does create a set of problems that I have seen in our community, and that's why I asked those questions specifically. So, but I appreciate you trying to answer that. And this is the hard part. We want to pass something and we have no idea what it'll look like. And that's really difficult from this place of really, truly understanding the necessary, understanding the good, and then understanding the potential for that. So I continue to be concerned about that because this is such a small community of, a limited number of residents. My concerns are not as grave here as they have been on some of the bigger districts where, again, not all residents are the same. And we start to see, in different communities, frustration with these different processes and what's happening. And it is very confusing to understand for many residents. But I appreciate you trying to answer those questions to the best of your ability.
Yeah.
Yep,
Just an additional thought. I mean, to your point of, the additional enforcement mechanisms, there's also a double-edged sword there, right? If you have an HOA, they have less enforcement ability, which means tougher collections abilities, having to, have collection agencies, increasing costs of collecting the fees that they need to enforce the covenants. And so there's some inefficiencies on the HOA side that you actually don't see on the Metro District side as well. So, maybe you're saying it's glass is half full, empty. I'd like to say it's half full because there's some added benefits on the Metro District side. On the Metro District side, you also have a truly representative elected government, as opposed to on the HOA side, you have the ability for proxies and all that might bring with it. So you do have sort of a truly elected members of the community. So in the event that you sort of have neighbors against neighbors, it's not a proxy battle. It's actually a election that's held, by the same election standards that you all were elected. So I, in my mind, at least, that makes it a little bit more fair and representative.
Appreciate that. Other questions? Okay. And then do we have anything further from, make sure we don't have anything else from the applicant.
I just want to make sure I got through all the slides. Thank you.
So do we have anything further from staff? Do we have further questions for staff from the board?
Thank you, Madam Vice. I just wanted to confirm I made some statements based on what I believe to have been my memory. So I just want to confirm or make sure that was accurate statement and that I wasn't saying something that was not accurate. So did we have a previous request of a metro district that was turned down, and at least part of the reason was the fact it was requesting a 40-year bond?
That is correct, Commissioner.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any other additional comments or questions for staff? Okay, so we will move on to the public portion of this hearing. So we will first hear from anyone who is here in support of this item. Do we have anyone here to speak in support of this item? And is there anyone online? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to those who are here to speak in opposition. So if I have anyone here to speak in opposition, please come on down. If you can sign in at the podium there and then speak your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Mrs. Vice Chair, Commissioners, thank you very much for allowing me an opportunity to speak. My name is Robert Guevara. I am U.S. Navy retired 22 years. I have a business degree and have extensive financial background exercising that business degree. I am the manager of Paintbrush Hills. I've been a manager of Paintbrush Hills for 3.5 years. I am the president of the board of directors for Meridian Ranch Metro District, not Meridian Service Metro District. There's a distinction there. It's very important. And I'm also obviously a resident of Meridian Ranch. I say these things and introduce myself to let you know that I have a unique perspective on metro districts on both sides of the metro districts. I'm not necessarily saying I'm opposed to Eagleview, but I do want transparency. And there's a lot of things, especially in the last couple of weeks when it comes to metro districts, that concern me and other residents. So some of my concerns are developer control. A lot of these new metro districts, they said what they said, and I agree with a lot of the things they said. Everything on paper looks great, but when it comes to reality, it's not. And you can put things on paper, and legally it's okay, but when reality comes in, it's not the same thing. A lot of times, right after these metro districts are formed and they just admitted it, the first people on the board will not be residents. You guys asked that great question, when will residents get on the board? And if you just do the math, 38 divided by 10, average of 4 homes a year, that first election, you'll have 4 homes, 4 residents that would be eligible for the board. Other than that, wives of builders, developers, they have no vested interest in taking care of the residents. They have a vested interest in taking care of the builders and the developer. This is going on in Meridian Ranch. It's going on in a lot of other districts. It's in the news everywhere. Developer control, if anything, should have an exit strategy on paper. Right now, there's not. I have not seen that. And that's one of my biggest things that concern me. When we're looking at Eagleview, we're looking at 38 homes. They want $8 million for max debt. They're saying 6.5, but as soon as they vote that board in, that 6.5 goes out the windows and we go to 8. I'll guarantee it. And then if you do 38 homes and each home is $1 million, I saw today they're actually estimating 1.2 million. I'm not on the tax side, so my math could be wrong, but 38 million at 6.75% is what will be assessed. At 50 mill levies max, that's around 125,000 a year to pay back $8 million. Not going to happen. Okay, I'm out of time already. Oh my gosh, sorry.
If you could just wrap up
Okay,
your comments.
I got two other main points. Well, I already kind of talked about Meridian Ranch. I don't like coming up with problems without a solution. Metro districts are important. I do think your concerns of 38 homes, that small of a district, Paintbrush Hills can support them. It's not my decision, it's the board's. The reason Paintbrush Hills initially said they could not, because we don't have the water rights. If water rights come with us, we can support them without a problem. We have the infrastructure already in place. Solutions, have them put in writing in their documents that no critical votes to override anything will take place until you have 25% of residents, such as term limits, Tabor waivers, stuff like that. I request the board to pause for 30 days. Think about some of these things, and I have a long list of different things. I would love to have you ask me the same questions you asked them, but pause for 30 days, really look at it. Commissioner Gonzalez, you had some great concerns. It's very important to look at those. Vice Chair, you also had some great questions. These are important things to think about, and just saying them is one thing, putting them in writing is something else. Sorry for going over my time.
Thank
I've got
you.
a question for him, actually. So
Commissioner Gonzalez.
you said you did some math. I don't know how good your math is. So you estimated a payback cost per year. Under your math, and they can correct you, and that's part of what we do here. How many years would it take to repay the debt, bond debt, based on what you said you've calculated?
I didn't have time to send it out that much. I can tell you, Paintbrush Hills has a $9 million bond. With at build out, we'll have 750 homes to pay it back. Based on the estimate of 700,000 per home, right now we're set to pay it back in 20 years. That's with 750 homes. I would hate to be a resident in 38 homes trying to pay back $8 million.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Do we have anyone else to speak in opposition to this item? I don't see anyone in the room. Do we have anyone online? Okay. Okay, so we will close the public hearing portion of this. And I'm just going to ask for questions or comments from the board at this point. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, you have a response. Thank you.
I was going to waive eventually, let you have your discussion. Just a couple of responses, I guess, starting back with the debt issuance. As I mentioned during the presentation, the $8 million is a cap. The 6.5 is the current projected cost of public improvements. The financial plan is showing a actual, as I said, it's further constrained by the bond market. You can't issue more debt than you can pay back. The financial plan that's attached to the service plan is showing an issuance around $4 million. So it's not $8 million that's being paid back. We don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. I don't know what interest rates are going to be. I don't know what the construction costs of the public improvements are going to be. I don't know what the assessed valuation of these homes are going to be. The $8 million is to allow a buffer. That doesn't mean it's going to be reached. In fact, the financial plan is not even showing the $8 million being utilized. So I just wanted to make that point because that plays into the math. I also wanted to circle back on Commissioner Gonzalez's question about the 40 years, because I think there's a lot of confusion about that. This is standard. We're looking at a 30-year maturity. This is actually the same maturity. I was just in front of you a few weeks ago. I know it was a commercial district. The financial plan for that district was showing the exact same type of refinancing with a 30-year maturity and the 40-year sort of that delta that you're seeing. It's the same thing that was shown in that financial plan. A different set of underwriters, but I did have Tim take a look at that and just confirm it was showing the same type of payoff structure. So I just wanted to assure you that this is not something that's inconsistent. Last but not least, you're right. He's right that we can't control who's going to be on the board. We can't force individuals to run for the board. We can't force individuals to run for county commission. We can't force people to run for special districts. I think some of those changes might be something that they're taken up on a legislative basis for how turnover and decisions are made. But under current law, this is how special districts are set up, and they are a necessary financing tool so that development can pay its own way. I'll personally give you just a testimonial from this development group in a district that's it's in the county, but it's not unincorporated county, where it's a smaller community to the north. They personally found residents to sit on the board so they could hand over the board to those residents. I can't say that for all developers, but that's the experience I've had with this group of individuals. So while I can't guarantee that's going to be what happens in the future, I can't guarantee they'll find interested individuals, but I know that is the plan. That is how things have proceeded in the past. So just a testimonial.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
On that statement. So I was very, very specific last time. I did not want that last one that was for commercial or industrial to be very specifically not utilized as a comment of what could happen in residential. I made that very statement last month, and you were there. And my concern was, back then, that would be used in future discussions. I thought that would be a year or 2 years from now. It was used 1 month later to justify this. I just want to say that. Did I not say that last month?
Commissioner, you did, and respectfully, that was in relation to the overlapping of districts.
I said I did not want it used for residential discussions. Did I not say that last month? That was my concern that it would be.
Commissioner, my apologies, but my understanding of your comments at the last hearing were your concerns related to the overlapping of the districts. So I was merely pointing it out just to explain to you that the imposition term and the refinancing were standard. It has nothing to do with that development or the commercial nature of it or the overlapping of districts. So just to clarify my statement.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. For the citizen that testified in opposition, there was a comment that he made with regard to maybe trying to roll this in. I think it was to Paintbrush Hills. I just wanted to ask, was there an attempt to do that? It just wasn't possible to do. Was there no attempt to do that? What's your perspective about that comment?
Yeah, I did have a discussion, and I think it was the same individual I may have spoken with on the phone. I also had some correspondence with legal counsel for the district. My understanding is it's outside of the service area of Paintbrush Hills, so there would have to be amendments to not only the existing service plan. There'd have to be a lengthy inclusion process. It's a statutory process. There'd have to be an inclusion process. We also have existing homeowners in development that's quite different in that area. So the conversations that we had were that it really wasn't, it was sort of apples and oranges. And while in theory it might be possible, it really wasn't feasible or practical. Additionally, in order to issue debt on a portion of a district, if you were to expand the Paintbrush Hills district, you'd have to create a sub-district, which is another election process. And so at the end of the day, the costs associated with that were likely to really outweigh the benefit. So I've not heard any further correspondence of it now being practical or feasible. I don't know how, from a legal standpoint, it wouldn't be sort of impractical given all of those constraints and the existing development in that area.
Thank you.
I just want to pull on a little bit of a different thread here. When we are talking about, and I think I said 28 before, but it sounds like it's 38, if I'm getting that right, correct? 38 homes here. we have had other districts where, especially again, when you're relying on a very small number of homes, we know the market is volatile. We know that there's a lot of things. We've heard a couple of things around the current surrounding homes are in the low 600s to mid 700s. Home values have fallen a bit in this area. This you're projecting at 1.2. Certainly, I do think we still see that there are obviously folks buying homes, but in a situation like this, if we do have the projected time period for getting these built out, and this has happened in other metro districts that were small, where we're just not able to sell the homes in that period of time. What would be the responsibility on those homeowners? What would happen in that situation?
So I'm sorry if I'm understanding your question correctly. The question is, what would happen if build out is not matching the estimated time frame?
Yes.
So I could see two different scenarios. We have a recession, build out's not happening, and the district would go into sort of an inactive status and would wait for development to come back, would come back into active status, and then would sort of reactivate as if we just pushed pause, right? The other scenario might be that we start development, the district has issued some debt, and that debt needs to be serviced. So there's not ability for the district to go on to an inactive status. In that scenario, that's where the mill levy cap that Commissioner Vanderwerf was mentioning, we sort of see the flip side of that cap. The existing homeowners would be protected, and the bondholders would have taken that risk of development slowing. So the mill levy would be maxed out. The district would pay the bondholders what it could based on the few residences that are there. The homeowners are protected by that cap. The bondholders would bear the risk of not receiving the payments that they thought they were going to pay. So those are the two scenarios I can think of.
Yep, I agree.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions of the applicant from this board? Okay,
Thank
you. And okay, so now we will go ahead and bring it back up here for comments, or really comments and discussion from this board or a potential motion. This is in my district, so typically we do that, but I'm interested in hearing from other commissioners at this point if you have any comments before I contemplate a motion. Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I look forward to whatever motion you intend on making. I do want to say, that it certainly is not a high number of homes, 38 homes, but at the same time, this has been kind of a practice of ours, and it's been a practice of mine, with specific application to the criteria for approval and disapproval. It looks to me like this does meet the requirements, and the homeowner, the landowner has a right, in my opinion, to try to go forward and make something work to the best extent possible. I just feel like they have a right to do that. Notwithstanding the challenges that exist sometimes with these special districts and all of those inherent. And by the way, there was some good conversation about that today. I think, one of the challenges is, as many have highlighted here, is what I would call some looseness in the capacity to move from the developer to the landowners. That doesn't seem like we have perhaps the most optimized kind of process here in the state. But having said all that, I do believe that the landowner does have a right to move forward with that. So those are my comments. And I just want to make sure that those are heard. Thank you.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Vice. So I appreciate the request. As approved district, I still have concerns about the financial plan and what looks like already a pre-planning for the 40 years. So I have not been satisfied with answers to my questions on that, and so I don't think it's in the best interest of the area, surrounding area for that. Thank you.
So I actually have a couple of questions for our county attorney. So I would ask this board's indulgence to just take a quick recess and get some of those questions answered. If there are no objections. Okay, we'll just take a brief 5-minute recess. Hey, welcome back. So I apologize for the little bit longer than was anticipated. There were quite a few questions that needed to be cleared up. But at this point, if, okay, so we have the criteria up on the screen. So this is a really tough decision for me. And of course, this is in my district, so I'm going to make a motion here. But looking at the criteria, I still have a lot of questions on a couple of these criteria specifically. I'm not sure that it is clear that there is a new district necessary when we have heard from the neighboring district that there could be a way to work. So that is one of my first concerns here. I'm not sure that definite need has been met at this point. I'm also not sure that the special district is capable of providing economical and sufficient service to the area. And that economical piece is a little bit part of that. I still think that there's a lot of risk in the district because it's so small. So I'm really struggling to say that we have met this criteria at this point. I think that there could be some additional questions answered moving forward, but I don't think that it has been clear based on this criteria today. So I am going to make a motion to disapprove this item.
I'll second.
Are there any additional comments or questions or comments really at this point? Commissioner Van der Werf.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. And this has been a very interesting hearing, and I've appreciated it. In my humble opinion, based on my evaluation of the criteria, I believe that the applicant has met the requirements. So I just wanted to make that statement on the record. Thank you.
Just as an additional comment, again, as I said, I just don't think that we've gotten there. I think we've heard some contradictory things about whether or not this can actually meet this criteria. And if we are to disapprove unless we are certain of that in this situation, I can't be certain on that based on the testimony that was heard here today. In addition, I think there continue to be very specific things that I also talked about that are concerning to me, just based on the size of this district and the nature of how it's moving forward, and those continue to be concerns as well. I think maybe there is opportunity to continue having a conversation around some of those things moving forward. And there's a second opportunity, but at this point, I just think that there are quite a few things that really should be looked at that are different about this district because of its size specifically. So I will go ahead and call the roll. Commissioner Van der Werf.
Yes, on the motion to disapprove, I vote nay.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
And the vice chair votes aye. So that motion carries 2-0. In the event that there is 2-1. In the event that there is a 2-1 motion because of the number of commissioners that are here today, this item is automatically continued. So I'm going to ask whether our county attorney or the clerk wants to talk about the options moving forward.
Madam Vice Chair, I can answer that question. So the next available meeting when both commissioners will be present to vote to review the record and vote would be September 12th, 2023 at that BOCC meeting.
Okay.
And the item will be automatically continued to that date if the commissioners agree.
Okay. Ms. Ivy?
Just a procedural question, and I'm happy to follow up with the county attorney offline and appreciate all the consideration here today. At that continued hearing, will the applicant be able to make additional testimony to sort of address some of the concerns that came up today, or is it a rehearing on the record with all 5 commissioners present? And if you want to follow up with a response later, that's fine too.
Ms. Ivy, if we could catch up off the record, it's a bit of a longer answer.
Appreciate that. I don't want to take any unnecessary time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are moving to item 11.
Item number 11 is department and committee reports, non-action items, and there are none.
Item 12.
Item number 12 is the addendum, and there are no addendums today.
Item 13.
Item number 13 is executive session, and there is no request for executive session.
Thank you. And we have completed our agenda, so the meeting is adjourned.